Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, and welcome to the Morning Report. My name is Willie Lawson. I trust that you are well. Today it is Morning Report 310. It is April 21st, 2021, in the year of our Lord. Wow. Wow. We're going to do something a little different today. I know you guys who watch and you guys who listen on the podcast are like, you do something different all the time. Yes, yes, we do, and we will continue to. Um, Yesterday afternoon, late I guess, the jury verdict came out on the Derek Chauvin case, the George Floyd case, and it sparked a lot of conversation. I had not. I made some, I don't know, obligatory post on Facebook, I guess, last night or yesterday afternoon last night. And it was, it seemed to me like trying to, have you ever tried to mop up milk with a wet mop? You put the mop down and then the milk just goes everywhere. That's what it kind of seemed like to me last night. And while I was doing something else, I noticed that, you know what, I didn't really have a complete thought on all of it because there's a lot to unpack. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to try to unpack as much of this as we possibly can because there's lots to unpack. And I want to leave you with this today. I want to leave you with the idea that there is something that can be done. Now, some of you are going to take just that statement and run with it, and you're running the wrong way. You've got the football and you're running towards the goal line, but it's not your goal line. But there's something that we can all do. All of us can do, and we're going to try to talk about that as we progress in the program. We're going to try to unpack what happened and how things kind of went. All of it kind of went down, and we're going to try to explore some of our positions. I'm talking to conservative Republicans too. We're going to try to unpack some of our out loud positions are on certain things because a lot of this needs to be explored. A lot of these positions that a lot of us seem to think we hold need to be explored, and so we're going to do that as well. All right, but first we're going to take a little break, and I'm going to have a little of my coffee from my Premier One Driver's Cup. There you go. I love the smell of jet fuel in the morning. Mm. And then if I need something to wash that down, goes a little Topo Chico in a glass bottle. Golly, this stuff is so good. It's crazy. All right. Well, we can take a little break. We'll be back with the 310th episode of the Morning Report right after these messages. All right. We're back. Thank you ever so much for hanging out with me a little bit this morning. Again, like I said, the show's going to be a little different. Let's start off with a recap of what this is all about. Unless you were living under a rock in a foreign country, under the sea, unless you were living next door to SpongeBob, I understand. At Bikini Bottom, you can't not know. I mean, you just can't not know. George Floyd was. The police got called on him for some irrational behavior in a store, and he apparently had passed a bad 20. And then he had some irrational behavior at when the cops showed up and arrested him. We could see that from the police body cam footage, and there was a struggle. Mr. Floyd had what I consider a medical emergency. As this was being, as this was being taped, being recorded on video, and just horrifyingly enough, we all got to watch a human being die. We all watched human being die, and at that point he was in custody. He was handcuffed. He was on the ground. Apparently, there was 8 or 9 minutes where he was on the ground and seemed to be in a position that he was controllable. Seemed to be in a position where at that point he was controllable. A lot of Americans wondered. You know what? I'm going to get through all of this. Wondered. Oh, cool. Thanks, Paul. My friend Paul, our friend Paul Swanson's out there in the chat room. He's also so he'll be chiming in, and I'll be letting him chime in. Obviously, he's listening via his phone. He's a technical guy. So a lot of Americans who watch the recording, watch the video, were all wondered. Everybody of every stripe wondered, why was he on the ground that long? Why didn't the cops get him up and go ahead and take him to jail? Especially when it was apparent that he was having a medical emergency. When he was foaming at the mouth. I think everybody, let's just be real, everybody had that question. Everybody. Even before they knew anything else about how Mr. Floyd got in the position that he was in, people were wondering about the behavior of the police officer. And they were also wondering about the behavior of the other police officers. It wasn't like Derek Chauvin was there by himself. He was the senior officer. But he wasn't there by himself. From what I understand, there were two other officers there. Paul, correct me if I'm incorrect. I believe there were two other officers there, but they were both junior officers, not much more than fresh out of the academy. I kind of remember a story about this, that he was their training officer or something. So this is why they didn't hop in, because this guy's in charge. He's a senior person. Okay, thank you. I'm right. Well, why didn't they hop in? Because he's a training officer. He's a senior person. You just don't hop in because you're trying to start your career. I get it. And I don't think anybody realized that, again, Mr. Floyd is having a medical emergency. I mean, it's obvious he's having a medical emergency. And none of us know why he's having a medical emergency. The narrative is that Chauvin's on his neck. Well, we found out that if you watch closely, Chauvin wasn't on his neck. He was on his clavicle, I guess. Clavicle? Yes, that's that big blade-like bone in your back. That does press up against your lung. So, it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable at all. It hurts. How about that? It hurts. It hurts like hell. So, with all the other things that Mr. Floyd had going on, they found fentanyl in his body. They found methamphetamines in his body. So he had some issues going on. He was in distress. And he passed away. And he died right there. He died while in police custody on a city street in Minneapolis. There's no way to say that that's not horrible. There's no way to say that that's not horrible. Yeah, exactly, Paul. Paul chimes in, only the narrative and not what was actually happening. The narrative was that he was on his neck. He was not on his neck. He was on his clavicle. Thank you, my Mrs. Cunningham, my biology teacher in 10th grade. Thank you. We know some of the bones of the body now. Thank you. I know the bones of the body. Thank you to Mrs. Cunningham. And but there's no way to say that that's not horrible, that it wasn't horrible to watch. It's hard to watch. and that somebody had to be held accountable, especially when he started having, it was obvious, a medical emergency, and was being told. He was being told by people who were there that he was having a medical emergency, you know? And Officer Chauvin did nothing. He seemed to, at one point, smile as he didn't move. Problematical for him. Problematical for him. As the story goes, after, of course, after all the taping was, all the recording was over, they did get medical attention to him, and the paramedics worked on him frantically, but he was already gone. And then later we see the body cam footage of before of what happened, and his behavior was irrational. How much of that was because he was frightened? How much of that was drug induced? I think that only rational people can say that. Probably a little bit of both, right? And it all led to that. And then and then all of us know the aftermath, unless you are, again, living in Bikini Bottom. There were nights of riots, burning down. The burning of buildings. One of the saddest things was there was a low income apartment complex, and being built that was just being framed out, and that would have helped hundreds of Minnesota's poor burn to the ground, and it became a political football. I wish there was a way that we didn't inject partisan politics into every single thing. But I had a conversation with a local activist this morning, and it came to me that there's almost no way that we can do that now, because we have been socialized that way, and we have been medialized, a new word, medialized that way. Media has made it apparent that we must have a good guy and a bad guy, a white hat and a black hat. And that's how a lot of us are rolling these days, which is problematical because we don't always let ourselves see the entire picture of everything, because being medialized, being told that there's a good guy and a bad guy, that there is a clear line of demarcation between thoughts and opinions and situations and narratives, eliminate conversation and really discount nuance and context. I talk a lot about nuance and context, and details, because they're all important. If you're trying to get a handle on this kind of stuff, and of course that didn't happen, and riots happened, and then people just sort of again, red shirt, red jersey, blue jersey, and that was the thing. Sort of forgetting, at least for a while, that we watched a human being die on the streets of an American city. It was shocking, absolutely shocking. All right, we're going to take another little break, and we're going to talk about the trial. We're going to talk about, I'm going to share a few thoughts about the trial, because there was going to be there was a time where we weren't sure whether there was going to be a trial. Charges hadn't been formed against Chauvin. I think he was fired or resigned, but he had already left the force at that point. So we didn't know for a while, but a trial came. So we're going to talk a little bit about that when we get back. Thank you ever so much for spending some time with us here on The Morning Report. My name is Willie Lawson. The Morning Report is a production of fightbackmedia.com, fightbackmedia.com, fightbackmedia.com. We appreciate you, and we'll be back right after this. Well, hey everybody, my name is Willie Lawson, and you guys know that I do a lot of stuff on the internet. And you may think with what's happening on Twitter and what's happening on Facebook and what happened to Parler that the mainstream social media sources are really trying to rid themselves of conservative voices. And you'd be right. They most certainly are. Um, but you know what? It isn't as bad as you think it is. It's worse. But there are people who are willing to be platformed for free speech. One of those places is freedomforum.website. Freedomforum.website. You can go there and speak your mind. So come join us. Enjoy the freedom. Enjoy the fun. If you are a true blue conservative, small businesses are near and dear to your heart. They are the lifeblood of our life and economy. I believe this, and that's why my florist is not a website or phone number. My florist is Blooming Days Flower Shop, Tampa's premier flower shop. At 11618 North Florida Avenue here in Tampa, Florida, and at 6835 State Road 54 in Newport Richey. Call Christine at 813-933-1942 and at 727-232-6900. She can also be reached on the web at www.bloomingdays.com. One of the things that I get asked most is where can I get information that is not tainted with liberal bias, especially here in the Tampa Bay area. Well, now I have the answer. tbctampa.com, a website by and for Tampa area conservatives. Tampa's leading conservative voices speak freely at tbctampa.com. And you can too. So join the fun and enjoy the freedom at tbctampa.com. My name is Willie Lawson, and this is the Morning Report. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. The voice you just heard is my friend Paul Swanson. Paul Swanson is the heart, soul, and mind behind the SwansonReport.net, the SwansonReport.net, the SwansonReport.net. I liked it so much. I like it so much that I embedded it on the fightbackmedia.com website. So if you go to the tab and click more, I think the second thing is the Swanson Report. Go ahead and click on that bad boy, and it'll be being there. Sign up. That way you get notifications when we post. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, click that subscribe button down there and click the notification bell to make sure that you know when we post on that we post here on YouTube. So we appreciate that. We do. And visit the website. Go to the Facebook pages, the Morning Report Facebook pages, or the Fightback Media Facebook pages. We really appreciate it. Thank you ever so much. And if you feel so inclined, you can hit that Cash App for at Fightback Media. Hit that that $ Fightback Media on the Cash App if you feel so inclined, because it keeps me in Topo Chico. It keeps me here in Topo Chico, which is delicious, by the way. All right, let's talk about let me share a few thoughts. What I thought about the trial. I wondered early, and maybe I didn't keep up with it as much as I should have, and for that I apologize. If there was an attempt by the defense to change the venue, because a lot of times in these really volatile trials, the defense will ask for a change of venue because picking a jury that doesn't have an opinion already about this or that is very, very difficult when it's happening right there. If a crime happens in your house, it's tough to find a jury that's going to be impartial or hasn't formed an opinion of the people who live there. Uh, and that is obviously understandable, right? But there didn't seem to be. I didn't hear about. I don't know if Paul did or somebody else did. If you did, if you heard about beforehand, if there was an attempt to change the venue, go ahead and write that down in the comments area. I'd be curious to know. All right, but I don't think so. Which answers the question: why weren't the jurors sequestered? Well, because I thought that at that point, everybody on the jury, when they picked the jury, which was tough to do, pretty much knew what happened. You know what? I mean, again, unless you were living on Bikini Bottom, it's hard to not know. And especially if you lived in Minnesota, it was hard not to, beforehand, reading newspaper articles, watching television reports, looking out the window and seeing the flames down the street, hearing the police cars and fire trucks zipping around. Everybody already knew. Everybody already knew. Everybody in the jury pool already knew everything. And I can't believe that that people weren't starting anyway to form an opinion about what they thought was going on. I just can't even imagine. Or maybe I'm trying to move my microphone. I'm such an opinionated cuss that maybe I'm trying to push that off on other people that everybody's got an opinion about something when maybe not everybody does. I know I do. So maybe I don't know. But in any case, so that's probably why if you weren't going to have a change of venue, there was probably no reason to sequester the jury. Probably no reason to. I think they might have been. She should have been sequestered for their own safety. However, too late for that. It didn't happen. And especially as things worked out. Apparently, they weren't. The prosecution was not supposed to bring up George Floyd's past, or people weren't supposed to, or the defense wasn't supposed to bring up George Floyd's past. But they did. Why? Because, and I say it that way because of all the things I said in the last segment. They really don't have anything to do with that particular situation. It didn't. And we saw, and this is what I'm going to start talking to our conservative friends there. We started reading in all the things that we read and all the things that we see on the internet. What a bad guy George Floyd was, and some of the things that he did, and all those things. But it really didn't have anything to do with that incident. It was more of a culmination of his life that brought him to that position. Was it germane to the? It was the incident, and what the incident in the store, the irrational behavior, the resisting arrest that brought him to that position. But did it? He did some terrible things. Apparently, held a knife to a pregnant woman's stomach. Terrible, awful things. But was that a reason for Officer Chauvin to keep his knee on George Floyd's clavicle for 8.5 minutes? It's kind of a hard sell for me. It's kind of a hard sell. So there were some things in the trial that were, especially when you get politicians, and we talked about this on the Morning Report this week. Politicians like Maxine Waters, who decides that she needs to go be relevant because Al Sharpton was going. She was going to go too. So she got on a jet. I'm sorry. First, got a made sure that she had a police escort. Yes, a police escort, and to and from, and went down to Brooklyn Center and encouraged the protesters to break curfew, stay in the street, and become even more confrontational. If indeed there was not a guilty verdict. Really? Yeah. So she was in effect inciting a riot. If a riot had broken out, she was going to incite violence, encouraging people to be more confrontational against police. Well, except the police that are supposed to escort her in and out. Like I said a couple days ago, these people are amazing. These people are something else, something else. So we had that going on, and it is difficult for me to believe that didn't have any impact on the jury's decision. The jury had 3 charges to consider. They had a second-degree unintentional murder charge. That charge alleged that Chauvin caused Floyd's death without intent while committing or attempting to commit a felony of third-degree assault. In turn, third-degree assault is defined as an intentional infliction of substantial bodily harm. The second-degree unintentional murder was like, and he died. I'm sorry. There was also a third-degree murder charge alleging against Chauvin causing Floyd's death by perpetrating an act imminently dangerous to others and evincing a depraved mind without regard to human life. Okay. I thought that was a stretch. But, okay. We're not trying to retry this here this morning. There was a second-degree manslaughter charge alleged that Chauvin caused Floyd's death by culpable negligence, whereby the person creates an unreasonable risk and consciously takes chances of causing death or great bodily harm. Okay, again, we're not here to retry the case, not by any stretch of the imagination. But personally, that seems the most appropriate. It seems the most appropriate. But what happened is the jury convicted Derek Chauvin on not 1 or 2 of these charges, but all of them. Every single one of them. Now, again, and this is going to be tough for a lot of my conservative friends, because my idea is this. My idea is that we have to make sure that we are taking all of this in. Derek Chauvin had a pretty long list of complaints of excessive force against him already, which kind of makes you understand why some of the people on the police force didn't circle the wagons for Derek Chauvin. There was no circling the wagons for him. There was no thin blue line to protect him. So that's not a narrative that can be pushed by the other side, that the the police decided they were going to protect one of their own. No, they didn't. They kind of hung the dude out to dry. And I think it had to do a lot to do with Chauvin's history with a number of excessive force complaints. Let's go ahead and get that in ether too. And again, we're not trying to retry this trial. Um, so those were the charges, and they convicted him on all three charges: a manslaughter and two murder charges. I think. Let me make sure that I get. I'm trying to get as much information to you this morning as I can. That the charges may, and this is up to the judge's discretion, may total about 40 years in jail. Chauvin is 45. 40 years would make him obviously 85 by the time, if he were to serve all of it. So this could be effectively a life sentence, if indeed he gets all the time and then serves all the time. Hardly anybody serves all the time that they're given. That's just not something we do in this nation much anymore. Everybody gets time off for good behavior or whatever, or you start a library in the prison. Oh, that was in Shawshank Redemption, sorry. But it could effectively be a life sentence for Derek Chauvin. Is that going to be enough? We're already seeing people who are saying, especially on the progressive side of the aisle, who are saying this isn't justice, this is accountability. Well, here's the deal. And I was scrolling through Instagram and saw somebody in an Instagram story that said justice would be if George Floyd was still alive. Well, that's not possible, unfortunately. It is something that everybody, and again, nobody's going to like this statement. Some people like it. Some other people won't. I'm going to say it anyway. You can't keep moving the goalpost. You can't scream in the street that you want justice, and then the dude that you want justice against gets probably 40 years. Now, he hasn't been sentenced yet. No, I don't have any inside information if he's been sentenced yet. But those charges could bring 40 years, which for a 45-year-old who's never been to prison and who's an ex-cop in prison, could easily be a life sentence for him. It could easily be a death sentence for him. And then say that's not enough. Come on, y'all. And in the words of Joe Biden, come on, man. Really? We have to get a definition of what these words mean so we know what so we're all talking about the same thing. Are we talking about justice? Was justice served? Some will say yes, some will say no. But that's kind of how it always is, right? And I'm going to turn this to my conservative friends again. We tell people all the time we should trust the justice system, trust the process. Well, this was the process. Yes, we can all pick the process apart, but this was the process, and we all know, everybody knows that this is not the end of the process. When you're faced with 40 years, you are going to try to appeal this. That is the first thing on your mind. I'm sure that Derek Chauvin's attorneys prepared him for what happened yesterday. I'm sure it didn't. It probably came as a disappointment, but it didn't come out as a shock. And they were already talking about what their next step was going to be if it was necessary. So there's going to be an appeal. The problem is, going to be for a lot of people, like I said yesterday, because of the behavior of people like Maxine Waters and others, and the mayor of Minneapolis and others. This thing could be thrown out on appeal. Other things we talked about today, about the non-sequestering of the jury and the non-moving of venue, all, and the comments from Maxine Waters and the mayor of Fry, I think his name is, of Minnesota. All these things could amount to not a mistrial, but the case, this trial being thrown out, and a new trial happening. Could. I'm not saying it will. Again, I don't know. My crystal ball is in the shop, and my Ouija board got wet, so I don't know. I can't tell you the future. My hope for everyone as we traverse this very rocky terrain is that we take time. All of us take time to listen to one another. Seriously, to listen to one another. Not be so quick with an opinion or a retort. You know how sometimes you do it. You who are listening, you do it. You're having a discussion with somebody, and instead of listening to them, in your brain, you're thinking about how you're going to counter what they're saying now. You're not really hearing them. Hey, let's spend some time listening to each other. Hearing what they're really saying. Trying to identify what they're really saying. And I'm saying that we all have to do this. I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on. We all have to do this. Take off the jersey. Start listening. My name is Willie Lawson. This has been the Morning Report, 310 for April 21st, 2021 in the year of our Lord. Thank you ever so much for tuning in today. We appreciate you greatly. And just like always, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye-bye now. Please make sure that if you like what we do, click the subscribe button and click that notification bell. We appreciate it. Thanks so much.